Hey everyone, welcome to week 5 of Ag Ed 263, the history of U.S. and world agriculture. I'm still Dr. Smith and hanging out with you as we come back to our timeline. So we've spent 2 weeks looking at farming systems so that we can talk about how farming works and we can all get on the same page with some terminology. And I hope that the last 2 weeks you've been able to get a broad view of how humans interact with agriculture today. We're going to go back to our timeline, and we'll be on our timeline for the rest of the semester as we talk about how humans first got the idea for agriculture, what some of the pressures were that shifted from that nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle into an agrarian society. And then we will do some really cool stuff as we look through some specifics of that pressure and how we started to domesticate things for human use. So by the time we're done this week, our goals are really to talk about that shift in culture and how the world was and how humans were that pressured humans to start agriculture. We'll talk about why an agricultural lifestyle might have been more beneficial to humans than a non-agricultural lifestyle. We'll talk about some of the discrepancies about why and where agriculture first occurred, and we'll be able to investigate a little bit about why there are differences and why did it all kind of start in different places at the same time. Then we're going to talk about domestication, so domestication of crops and animals and how that process went for humans. You'll get to do another assignment this week, and you'll pick a specific crop or animal, and you'll tell us a little bit about the history of their domestication. So that's where we're going for week 5. Now, the shift from farm to farming happened for a bunch of different reasons, and partly it was harder for us to obtain resources. People realized that they could live longer and less strenuous lives if they weren't hunting and having to be on the move all the time, that we can better take care of the very young and the very old as humans if we're not moving around all of the time. And we're going to think through what might have been going on in early man's brains that would allow us to start reasoning out that it would be beneficial in order to have a more stable, secure society. But to do that, we have to have food available. So farming happened at a whole bunch of different places around the globe at the same time. That's something to keep in your mind is why, as you go through reading the chapter that you'll read in the Sapiens book this week. Now, I am not all about reading for the sake of reading. In fact, we don't use a text for this class because I don't think there's a really good one that does a great job of highlighting all the things that we need to examine. But I do think that the book Sapiens is fascinating. It talks about how humans came to be and how humans came to today. But chapter 5 is one of my very favorite chapters. It talks about kind of what happened in that shift and what led to the pressures and how humans lived pre the Neolithic era and then what pressured us into agricultural society. The chapter is called History's Biggest Fraud, and I think that Dr. Harari does a really nice job of being conversational in tone about how things make sense or don't make sense in this period of time. So it's one of the only readings that I will assign for the entire semester because I think it does a really nice job of highlighting information that would be really boring for you to have to listen to me talk about through a PowerPoint. So it talks a little bit about how agriculture occurred, when, and why. Now, I do want to make sure that we note that we're going to talk about domestication, and humans are not always awesome. So in the history of domestication, there were some things that happened to animals that were really, really bad. So we can't ignore that in order to domesticate animals, there was a lot of mistreatment of those animals. I do want to point out, though, that Dr. Harari is a sociologist and may not always be an agricultural scientist, and I think that there are a couple of inaccuracies in this chapter, and I wouldn't be doing myself any justice as an agricultural educator if I didn't point out a couple of those. So just a couple of notes before you read the chapter. In the end, they'll talk about what is acceptable in current modern practices. Those are, he's talking worldwide and globally. Those are different from some of the regulations that you all probably have seen and different than your backgrounds here in the United States. So I do want to make sure to point out that as you read the chapter and you start hearing about some of the bad things that happen, know that there are regulations for care in the United States, the European Union, and almost all other sovereign countries have strict regulations for animal welfare and management. One of the ones that I think is the most inaccurate in the chapter is there's a picture of a veal box. That picture actually comes from Israel, and it's been since outlawed, even in Israel, for veal animals to be kept in the conditions that are shown in the box. Those conditions are very different in the United States. The veal industry has gone through in the last 2 decades some changes which now require each animal to have a minimum of 300 square feet of area that they can move around in, and I don't want to perpetuate that what's shown in that chapter is accurate. We also talk about the common practice of tearing dairy calves away from their mothers. We know from those that are doing those management practices in the dairy industry that that is likely, in almost all cases, the best situation for the calf. We haven't bred dairy cows to be maternal or to want to or desire to take care of their babies or even not harm them. So we've bred them only for milk qualities rather than maternal qualities. And humans are for sure the better caretakers of dairy calves in the United States today. We know there's going to be differences in how those viewpoints are seen, and that animal happiness is likely best derived by those who are around animals on a daily basis. And by and large, the individuals specifically in our developed countries in the world have their animals' best interest at heart. Not only is that more profitable for them, but that it's not a lifestyle that people desire to be part of if they didn't genuinely enjoy making sure that animals were well cared for. So that's kind of my soapbox moment, that I know that there are a couple of inaccuracies or some statements that Dr. Harari makes that are very much from a sociologist standpoint, and I wanted to make sure to counter those from an agricultural science standpoint. So just before you read the chapter, know that I am aware that there are some potential inaccuracies at the end. I still think the chapter is worth reading. So that's why it's assigned this week for you. Domestication, we're going to do an assignment on that. So as we talk about domestication, that's the process of adapting anything from its wild ancestral, lives in the natural ecosystem for human use. We domesticate both plants and animals, and you'll get to pick between a crop or an animal for your domestication assignment. There's 5 things that have to be true for something to be domesticated. There has to be a clear reason it's kept. The nutrients that that organism takes in are subject to human control. That breeding and the genetic pass on for that species is subject to human control so that we can selectively breed for those traits that are most beneficial to the use that humans have decided is important. It changes from its wild version. For example, the wild version of the tomato is a member of the nightshade family and kills people. And so it's changed morphologically from that to the tomatoes that we can consume without dying. And it also, there's a change behaviorally for both crops and animals. In animals, we see them being more docile. And in plants, we see that they change in stature or seasonality or how they seed, when they seed, what the growth period is. And that's largely because of selective breeding. So there's 5 requirements for domestication. And all of those have to be true in order for us to consider it a domesticated species. There's a lot of places, and pretty much everywhere humans settled, we started domesticating things so that they could be better used for what humans needed from a societal standpoint. So this map kind of shows where lots of those crops and animals were domesticated first. There are a couple that are on the list that you get to pick between. For example, if you pick camel, I don't care if you do the dromedary from East Africa or the Bactrim from Southwest Asia, you get to pick which variety. If it happened in more than one place, just make sure you tell us that in your assignment. So that assignment is our domestication project. You'll make a video this week. Now, please know that you can make a PowerPoint and do a voiceover and save it as an MP4, and that will be a video. So you can use that. Canva will help you make a video. PowerPoint makes a video. Google Slides will even let you record a video. If you find that you're struggling with how to make a video, shoot me an email and I can send you a tutorial. But then you'll post that in either an MP4 format or an online link, like post it to YouTube so that we can get it. These are due on the 10th, but you'll pick a crop or an animal from the list, and you'll see we're using a sign-up genius this week. There were a few of you who had a trouble getting the sign-up page for the last assignment to work. We're going to try a sign-up genius instead. So you'll see that for each of the listed crops or animals, there's 3 available slots. You'll just click into that link, click sign up, put your name on a slot, and it will take that space. First come, first serve again. But once you've selected which animal or crop you're going to do for your domestication assignment, your job is to make a video that describes what was the animal or crop like before domestication, where domestication occurred, why we decided that it was important as humans to domesticate this crop or animal, and then what were those early changes? So what has happened to this crop or animal because of domestication? So what's different from the wild version? What's retained? And then what were the benefits of domestication to humans and to the crop or animal species? So because we've domesticated things, they are different, and tell us how and why that matters. So that's what we've got this week. There's also a quick video for you to watch on the domestication of the dog. That'll give you kind of an idea of what we're looking for in your domestication assignment. And dogs are not an option for this assignment because I think it's been well documented. It's probably the easiest one to do. So we just took that one off the list. So this week, your job is to watch the domestication of the dog video, read the Sapiens chapter, create a discussion thread, and that will serve as our quiz for this week, and then respond to one person that you'll be assigned after you submit your response and do your domestication project. So one more time, because I got a little bit random on that, you will read the Sapiens chapter, put your response to the discussion prompt in the discussion board, respond to one other person, and do your domestication assignment. As always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out, and I am always here to help. Thanks so much. Have a fantastic week.